I'm Fatheree.
This is Dave.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
So welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 47th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast.
Super fucking exciting.
Yeah, this is a major milestone because we hit my favorite number, 47.
The number I did not even really know about until we started doing this podcast, and even still forget about weekly. But apparently it's totemic to you Star Trek nerds.
You need to watch one of those videos on YouTube
that shows me all the uses?
Yeah.
No, never. It'll ruin it.
How will it ruin it?
It'll be like the Wilhelm. You know I hate the Wilhelm.
Yeah, but I think you still won't notice it. Because it's like a more natural thing when you're just saying something like, oh yeah, the Romulans are 47 light years away. Like,
I think if I hear it a bunch in a row, it will finally set in my brain.
God, then I hope to plant that mind worm in your brain at some point.
I'm going to deliberately be trying to avoid it. Nevertheless, I recognize and acknowledge its importance among the fandom in the interest of infinite diversity and infinite combinations.
Yeah.
Here's a whole bunch of the same number.
even including morons who believe in what is it? The number, the
numerology.
Numerology.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Like people who are super interested in the repetition of 47.
Like Newton was into that stuff.
Oh, was he?
But he's kind of weird. He's also into alchemy.
Yeah, well, it was the style of the time.
And Jesus.
That was the style for the time for like a few millennia.
Yeah, well,
not so much the style in Picard's era.
No, but what we're going to be talking about today is the franchise of Star Trek as a whole.
The whole thing, all the big stuff that's happening right now. Not like a historical overview, but like where it is at right now today.
Yeah, so I wanted to give a state of the franchise address
on this, the totemic magical holiday
of the 47th Tex-Trek podcast.
Tex-Trek podcast.
And
whatever
also,
day this airs needs to be a holiday from here on.
This should air on the third Sunday of October. Because that's one of the things I was going to announce today is that from now on we're going to try to distribute podcasts more regularly, and on the first and third Sunday of every month. Until we hit January, when new episodes of Star Trek Discovery come out, then we're going to be talking about Star Trek Discovery on a weekly basis, and those will probably be coming out on Sundays. The episodes will air on Thursdays, and then we'll have a podcast talking about those on Sundays.
In short, we're trying to be more disciplined, much like the Klingons.
Yeah, we don't want to take 2 years to do the next 47.
That's right. I mean,
podcasts.
That's respectable, I think. Yeah. That's respectable.
But the state of the franchise is based on, here in the United States, we have a president who gives a State of the Union address in January.
Yeah.
And I just got really sunburnt. I was at the University of Texas football game over the weekend, so I'm orange like the president. So that makes it a little bit more appropriate.
That's super thematic.
Or like
Could
the
you
aliens,
be fascist like him too?
The aliens and the apple on the original series.
That
episode.
sounds better to me.
Yeah, they were orange. I love that episode though. All the red shirts.
It's been a while since I've seen it.
It's actually a good one.
Is it? And so as a state of the franchise thing, just like real quick, an overview of like some of the things we'll be talking about.
Yeah, and this is probably something that I might want to get into doing yearly, although it's going to be hard to pin down when in the year, because if there's new Star Trek coming out, like, we have a lot on the horizon.
Maybe it's something we should do as it is clearly obviously time to do it. Like, oh, there's a new video game coming out. They've just announced the third series after the Picard series. There's a third series coming out. That's not true. But and whenever some stuff starts to happen, that's when it'll be like, it's time for a state of the franchise.
Yeah, and we just had about a month ago, we had the 52nd anniversary of Star Trek from when the original series premiere episode, The Man Trap, first aired September 8th, 1966. So we're moving into the 52nd year, I guess. Or no, the 53rd year?
Should be 53rd year if we celebrated the 52nd.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about the 52nd year and what's coming up in the 53rd year.
But do we want to quick just say, like, there's going to be TV, there's going to be an aside about a video game?
Just TV, movies, and other tie-in material.
Yep.
So mainly talking about story-based things. We're going to talk about like every piece of merchandise that has come out in the last year.
I want to talk about some lapel pin. Like the state of the data lapel pin. What do we got first?
Well, Star Trek is originally a TV show, and many of us feel that is its true form.
Right.
Is in television, so we're going to start there. And that's probably the most hottest topic right now.
Mm-hmm.
But we are also right at a little after the 1-year anniversary of Star Trek Discovery.
Mm-hmm.
So we're a year into having Star Trek back on the air again.
Right.
And just, looking back over the last year, it's been interesting seeing the reactions to that show.
Mm-hmm.
They were mixed initially.
Right.
They were mixed going into the show. There were a lot of people who had strong feelings about it before it even premiered. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of behind-the-scene drama with Brian Fuller leaving the show and the delays.
Right. It definitely left people were nervous about what that meant for it. You had a very potent showrunner who'd successfully run a lot of shows disappearing. It looked bad. Now that we've got a little bit of time between it looks like that may ultimately be in the show's favor as he gets away from some of his I don't want to say like some of his own Roddenberry wonkiness. Like it, he had some weird
ideas.
Yeah, he did. What was it? I forget what were some of the ones.
Space mushrooms and magic tardigrades.
Right. He's like, this has to be in there. This is
bald
Trek.
Klingons. Klingons are not allowed to have hair.
Yeah.
So some weird directives were given. But yeah, the show I think went over pretty positively. There's still some people that are kind of reluctant to get on the Discovery train.
Right, and there's this is ultimately anecdotal evidence, but because I follow like on Facebook and stuff like that, various Star Trek sites, mostly official ones for me. I pretty much see anytime anything Discovery related is posted, a handful of malcontents show up to like frowny face it, and I can't tell like
isn't that everything that ever gets posted on Facebook though?
But if Discovery comes up, or if there's something like one of those ones that shows like Trek's history and there's some Discovery stuff in it, and only some people are going to be like, it's all great except for Discovery. That's not true Trek. I think that will lessen over time.
Well, yeah, we just shared a video like that on our Facebook page that got like 500,000 views,
right?
And there were like 2 people who said something about Discovery stuff being in there. But to me, it really isn't that different from what I remember watching Star Trek before, because I don't remember a time watching Star Trek. I guess because I wasn't alive in the 70s. Mm-hmm. I wasn't a fan when just everyone either liked Star Trek or didn't like Star Trek.
Right. You only had one. You were either into the one thing that was Trek or not.
Yeah. So I never knew a time where
Trek wasn't at least multiple things.
Yes, and where there weren't people actively complaining about whatever Star Trek was on at the time.
Right. This is not like the original, or this is not like Next Generation.
I mean, I remember being a kid in the 90s, and there were people who complained about, like, Voyager and DS9.
Right.
And then people who complained about Enterprise.
Right.
And so, to me, like, I don't...
You're like, this is how it's always been as far as you know.
Yes, this feels very normal to me.
That's an interesting point, and I do think that the objections will diminish over time. I think the thing that probably feels most different, because I feel like the broad spirit of Trek, which is, projects an enlightened future, is for sure there. It's really the structure, I think, that doesn't quite feel like it. It's simply that highly. They're still episodic enough, but it's less episodic. It's and more arc based, and I think that and. I honestly feel like probably a lot of the people that are disliking it. I mean, there's some legit reasons to like say like, okay, well, I think they're doing some story contrivances, and that this doesn't quite make sense as a structure idea. But I think some of it is just plain old fashioned like misogyny, xenophobia, and good riddance to all of them. So if that is where they're at,
well. The show is getting its Blu-ray release on November 13th, so that's coming up pretty soon. And then we also have just gotten the second trailer for Season 2. Mm-hmm. And you'd think we could all just be happy and celebrating Season 2, but then there was some more behind-the-scenes drama with the showrunners departing again, with Gretchen Berg and Aaron Harberts, Brian Fuller's lieutenants that were kind of like left behind to tend to the show after he left. They were fired. Alex Kurtzman was put in charge. But based on everything Alex Kurtzman is saying and doing, I feel like maybe this is the way to go. Maybe he's the guy who should be running the thing.
So I haven't read up a ton of this. Is there a broad public reason that they were fired that we can that's known?
The reason that was given was that they went over budget with the first episode, and that they were mean to the writers. They were like, I guess, yelling at people. And people had like raised complaints about that. Mm-hmm. I don't know how true that is.
I feel like that could be the cover for they just don't fit the vision that we think is going to be successful.
Well, I don't know if like the CBS people just liked Alex Kurtzman more, if they thought because I mean they apparently really liked what he pitched to them because they signed a 5-year contract with him. Mm-hmm. So he's going to be in charge of Star Trek on TV. All Star Trek on TV is going to be for the United States anyways on CBS All Access. Mm-hmm. And we know that they have multiple shows that they're developing, and we don't know how many will be greenlit. We do know that they're talking about doing animation, which sounds really cool. And
I don't know. I'm not sure where I stand on that one.
What's your reluctance with the animation?
It feels too far from the live action stuff that is the core of Trek. I feel like I'm going to see it, and I'm going to be like, oh, they're going to play up like the kind of action adventure stuff. And it's not going to quite feel like Trek. Because Trek has action-adventure, but it's not...
We had an animated show before, though.
I know. Do you love it?
I don't love it, but I don't hate it.
Yeah.
There's good episodes to it.
Well, I don't know if I want something whose highest qualification is that I don't hate it.
But...
I mean, here's the thing. Animation has pretty good...
I don't dislike the animated series.
Animation has some good... Certainly, adventure animation especially has some good things to recommend. Whether 90s onward, I think, in particular, we've talked about Batman the Animated Series or Avatar Last Airbender or Rebels. And so there's certainly things to recommend, but I feel like animation is inherently going to emphasize kind of an action-adventure thing, and that Star Trek is inherently somewhat cerebral. You can qualify it however you want. It's still an action-adventure show, too. But I feel like it's moving away from what I want from Trek. I don't think it's going to destroy it.
The last time they did an animated series, it was just as cerebral as the original series. I mean, they had just weirder-looking aliens.
Not in a 20-minute format. They did much better. Like, here's the thing: they did much better than I would have guessed. They used science fiction authors. They used the same style as the show. But the difference between like a 45-minute show and like a 22-minute show or whatever is pretty notable. There was still also some action, cartoon action tropes of like the 60s or 70s in there.
That's kind of cool, though.
It's interesting. And here's the...
We need to do a podcast on... I'm going to pick some animated
I'd be down
episodes.
for it. I'd be down for it. I haven't watched them in a long time, so that's...
I'm going to pick like top 6 or something.
I watched the episode that had Spock's little sad...
Yesteryear, yeah. That's one of the best
it's
episodes
very good. It's very good.
Of any Star Trek.
Animation is a little tough on me because, it's that kind of Johnny Quest animation that's a little stiff, a little...
Yeah, I mean, it's cheap 70s animation. Yeah.
But, yes, it's well done. But I don't know if I necessarily want it out there. Here's the thing that I most like about that notion of it, is that I think that one thing that the Kelvin Trek movies did very well was to restore some energy and some liveliness to Trek. And I actually feel like an animation thing that kind of brought in younger viewers that did play up some action adventure stuff, whether it's like Klingons kicking ass or what do you call it, a Voyager Elite Force type of thing. I do think you could have some fun with that. There is probably room in the Trek shared universe for that kind of stuff. It doesn't all have to be cerebral.
You could also use it to push things into different science fiction areas that would have like weird visuals that would be hard to do live action.
Yeah. I don't really mean to like totally dismiss it, but I'm not. It's on the lower end of projects I'd be excited about.
Well, here's the thing: is that we've talked a lot about how Star Trek needs to get younger people hooked on the franchise.
Yep.
Because pretty much everyone who likes Star Trek is at least in their 30s or 40s. A lot of people older than that.
Many of them dying.
Yeah, like there's more dying than coming in, probably.
Does Star Trek Rebels and Clone Wars before it and the new one Resistance, does that pretty much link up with, like, is that mostly older viewers, or is there, I think they've got a pretty solid kids of Star Wars fans.
Yeah, I remember actually George Lucas saying in an interview 10 years ago or so, maybe not quite that long ago, but before they were making the Disney Star Wars movies. And he said that there's basically 3 different sets of fans. You have the fans of the original trilogies, and then you have people younger than them who are fans of the prequel trilogy, and then you have the fans who are kids now who, to them, Star Wars is the Clone Wars cartoon.
Right.
And...
it definitely, as like sort of a marketing and franchise development project, I think makes a lot of sense. And I think that there's enough quality, there's quality animators and animation writers out there that they could pull it off. I think the more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm sort of seeing the possibilities.
I mean, and you could do like really cool science fiction stuff.
But I also don't want it to. I want to make sure that they do it right and that it doesn't come off as like a half-ass a version of like the Star Wars cartoons, which are very successful. Like, I don't want it to be the little shitty second cousin to it.
Well, no, I don't think they would do that. I mean, like, they seem to be putting a lot of money into Discovery and this Picard show. If they have Patrick Stewart signed for multiple seasons, then they obviously got some money behind it. So I think it'd be like I mean, they might be like, oh, this is like our little animation thing, so we're going to be kind of dismissive of it, but I wouldn't be surprised if they put like a lot of money and effort into it.
Here's what I think we should do. We should do an episode where we talk about a few kind of best of episodes of the 70s show, and then we can hypothesize a few, like we each come up with 3 different things that we think would be cool premises for a modern animated version. Just see what we can come up with.
Yeah. I mean, like, one thing, like, you could have, like, they go to, like, 2-dimensional space where everyone's, like, flat, and you do, like, this weird, like, animation thing where, like, they're, like, I don't know, like, they're flat like Mario on the NES games.
Yeah,
then, like,
Paper Mario.
It's like Paper Mario, and then, like, they come in, like, back in the 3D realm. Or, like,
right, something that could be kind of absurd if they tried to do it in live action, but could feel more natural in a more visually splendiferous land of animation.
Or you can have more alien-looking aliens. I know, like, a lot of people want more... aliens.
Yeah, I would prefer fewer just little weird bumpy aliens.
Well, there's a canonical explanation of why there's so many humanoid aliens in the Star Trek universe.
Does it have to do with like the guys who seeded the...
Yeah, from the episode The Chase on The Next Generation.
Okay.
And because most actors are humans.
Yeah.
So...
Right. I honestly, I don't mind them using humans as a basis. I think I would just like them to be a little bit more creative as to how they make them alien. And there I feel like they should take a page from Doctor Who.
Like the guys from the opening of Star Trek Beyond that fought Kirk.
Well, I don't know if we want to go to that place. I don't know if we need
Those are some of the most aliens Star Trek's ever had.
You know, they were like... just little, like, they were like out of a cartoon though themselves. But we should we'll return to that. Let's return to that.
But yeah, we also have the Picard show in development, and I have some news on that came out of New York Comic Con. So be sure to check out that YouTube video if you haven't seen that. But basically, it sounds like writing is going smoothly. Kirsten Beyer as well as Michael Chabon are writers on that show, and
so Chabon will be doing not only is he like essentially one of the main series writers?
The only other thing I know that we know for sure that he's writing is the next short Trek,
right, in
November,
right. Okay, but so I thought you were saying he was writer on Picard
Yeah, I thought you meant like in addition to that. Like if he was a Discovery writer also.
Right, so yeah, we'll get a little taste for his writing on the Discovery short, and then we'll get to see him as a series writer.
And yeah, it looks like that show's going to go into production in around April, and should premiere in early next. So I'm thinking, because Discovery started production on season 2 in April of last year, and just is about to premiere in January. So I'm thinking that'll kind of be the turnaround on Picard show. Discovery Season 3 will drop in either the summer or fall of next year. So they're taking like a little bit longer than a year between seasons.
You know, I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but I was excited to see, I think it was no more than Will Wheaton saying, I'd like to appear on that show. But I'm excited about the idea that of like him formally sort of throwing his hat into the ring, at least among the fans.
Are you surprised, though? Like, any of those Next Generation people will come back.
Sure. For some reason, I hadn't thought of him. I was thinking of the core crew and not the little youngins. And
he came back for Star Trek Nemesis.
It's true.
But they cut his scene out of the movie.
Right. I think, and also because I think he was a character, along with maybe like Troy, who had the most unfulfilled potential.
Agreed. And I just want to say, like, not everyone would be happy to see him come back. I would.
Are we talking about Will Wheaton, or are we talking about Wesley Crusher?
Both.
Okay.
But if there's
people hated Wesley Crusher.
Yeah, if there's a good Wesley story to tell, though, I'm down. And the fact that the Picard show will be multiple seasons, because I originally thought like they're only going to do 1 or 2 seasons.
Right. He would just kind of do this, and he's like, okay, I've got that out of my system. Yeah. One last shot, all good. But it seems like they are in it to win it.
So I'm thinking if they're going to be doing like 13 or so episodes a year, then yeah, that does really open up the possibilities for them to come across, stories where like, okay, it would make a lot of sense if we had, Worf show up here, or, Riker and Troy show up here. And if they wanted to, they could draw from Voyager and DS9 as well, because those characters should still be out and about in this time period, 20 years after Nemesis.
Yeah, totally.
So
that gives that Picard show potentially the hugest role that we've seen in expanding the post-Nemesis universe. The biggest role that anything has had since then, I guess.
Yeah, this will be the first time we have canonical stuff other than the destruction of Romulus.
So don't screw it up with more stuff like that, is what we're saying, CBS.
But I'm fine with Romulus being destroyed. I think there's a lot of cool story possibilities you can get out of that.
Sure.
And I want to see that acknowledged.
It just happened in a dumb way, that's all.
I need to see that acknowledged on the Picard show.
You want the canon stuff to kind of fit together. You want them to play nice.
It's just
with
that's such like a big deal about like, oh yeah, the Romulan Empire. Like
one of the like 2 foremost threats in the original series and many times since lost their entire homeworld. It would be weird to not mention it.
Yeah.
All right, what else we got?
Well, there were also some other controversies going on the CBS side of things, though. Okay. We did get a request from Facebook user Wayne Alfred, asked us to talk about the Tardigrade lawsuit.
Yep.
So if you don't know, there is a Tardigrade game that's on development
for Steam. And from what I've seen, we watched the trailer for it, and you've read a little bit more on it than I have. It looks like an old school point and click adventure game, like really like the kind I remember from the 90s for PC games. And not unlike, there was like a point and click Star Trek game that was known to have gotten like a lot of the original cast voices for TOS. And, this was also like the LucasArts, Indiana Jones games and things like that. If you pictured those types of games with a kind of sci-fi setting that looks somewhere between... Sorry, we're watching the trailer, and there's one part that's freaking me out a little bit. There seems to be sort of... I'm going to say it looks either like romantic or at least huggy between a giant tardigrade and a person, and it kind of made me laugh. I don't know what's occurring here, and I don't want to disparage whatever kind of ideas he might be exploring, but at a quick glance on the monitor, it's...
You see how it envelops him and then it scurries off into space, like the animation on here where it scurries off.
Like you feel like it might have. Was it assaulting him? He seemed to be into it. Or
Hashtag me too.
I feel like So in the trailer for it, it has a little bit of a look of a budget game. It looks like it's the graphics are kind of, I'm going to say, deliberately retro 90s because it looks like an old point and click game. They're not bad, but it's a... I guess the central thing is that this guy is saying he had this story that's a sci-fi story that involves a tardigrade that looks roughly the size of the Discovery tardigrade
of Ripper,
creature, which is not literally a tardigrade, is it? Isn't it?
Well, no, it's an alien.
It's an alien that resembles a tardigrade systems, and it's super survival. It has super survival skills like a tardigrade does. So this guy has a sci-fi story that like kind of tangentially has a big old humanoid-sized tardigrade, and I think he's got some other characters. I've seen little side by side that he says looks like Discovery characters. Although the art, the thing that I'm looking at here on your monitor, Fatheree, has a picture of like Kirk and like, I don't know, like somebody in a cosplay costume next to like a redhead that he had in there. There's a redhead chick.
It's weird.
Like that's not an argument in its favor. That seems to be suggesting that he was in fact pulling from Star Trek.
This is stuff that Wayne sent us to look at.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like some of that works against it. So is the question is like, is this a frivolous lawsuit or not? Is it a harassment lawsuit? Is he just looking for a payoff? Here's the thing. I have no doubt that the game is sincere. Like, that this is a sincerely developed game. It even looks to me like it was for sure has inspirations from Star Trek. Although the dude's talking about like smoking up at some point felt more like I was joking about like Harlan Ellison's original script for City on the Edge of Forever.
Yeah, where people do drugs on the Enterprise.
Yes.
But the thing is that if you look at this guy's YouTube channel, An Astronaut Cartoon, he's got videos dating back a few years of just animations of this game that he's been working on. But as far as I can tell, this game has never been released. And I don't know.
It's actually called Tardigrades, right?
And I don't know how many people would have been looking at this game that was never released on Steam. And then, I think like the closest thing to a smoking gun is the fact that, they have like a giant tardigrade alien, just like on Discovery.
Yeah.
That hangs out with this blonde guy and does weird space travel stuff with him. And, comparing that to Ripper and Stamets. But the video clip of that I'm seeing, and if anyone out there has footage of this from earlier, let me know. But from what I'm seeing, that was just a video that came out last year, after Star Trek Discovery would have been in the middle of shooting. I'm looking at something now published July 12th, 2017. They had, I'm sure, already, if not completed, we're wrapping up the CGI animation on those Ripper episodes.
Right.
This is just a couple months before Discovery premiered.
What I'm going to guess, this is just kind of a first blush. Tardigrades have kind of entered the popular culture. I think that I don't know when they were discovered, but I believe their presence on Cosmos, the new Cosmos that had Neil deGrasse Tyson.
It was a little bit before them. There was like a article that went viral like in 2010, I think.
Right, about their indestructible nature. Like they can survive in space and they're just ridiculously hardy little dudes. You can drop them in some lava or some shit and they're alive.
Yeah, 2010 or 2011.
Sounds right. But they did also, they were profiled as like the kind of some of the hardiest creatures when they were talking about possible different types of extraterrestrial life we might encounter in the new Cosmos from what was that, 4 or 5 years ago?
Yeah, that was like 2014.
Right. And I feel like they've kind of entered the popular culture. I've seen plush tardigrades and stuff like that were not around like, say, 15 years ago. But yeah, starting around 10 years ago, they started to show up in places. Yeah. And I think that they're, sci-fi guys are, of course, going to be on the cutting edge of a sci-fi concept like that that's neat. They look super cool and weird and creepy. They're, like, cute and yet creepy. So I see why people would kind of gravitate to them. I think it's just a case of a little bit of parallel thinking.
Yeah. I think the reason why Wayne wanted us to talk about that is just because a lot of people... I've seen this more on YouTube than anywhere else, but people are talking about how, this guy is suing CBS, and a lot of people are framing it as like he has a strong case. Whereas, and I agree with Dave. I'm sure the game is sincere. It looks like a lot of effort went into this. And as far as I can tell, it hasn't been released, so the guy is still working on it and has been working on it for years. And I just don't see it as being such like a open and shut case. In fact, I'm very inclined to think that it was just some parallel thinking, like Dave suggested.
I'm not going to like knock the guy for his lawsuit if he thinks it's sincere, but the possibility should be at least discussed of, did this lawsuit exist to put them on the map? To get the people who, the large Star Trek audience, to just pay attention to his game.
And maybe that's working for him. Maybe this game will, maybe he'll get some funding to finish it, or whatever. But
I guess I would say my initial thought is I wish his game well. I don't feel like I've seen enough to make me think the lawsuit has any serious merit right now.
Yeah, and we're not shills for CBS.
No, I would be. I want you to know that if CBS, if you're watching this, I'll take your money. I'll wear your T-shirts.
I don't want your money.
All right, Fatheree's independent on this.
Yeah,
I don't think that they care about us though, so I feel that there's zero chance of it happening. But I would take it. I would sell out in a heartbeat if they paid me.
But I hate all corporations with a passion.
That's true. That's true. If I did it, if I were to sell out, Fatheree would choke me out on video. So I have to keep that in mind.
But and I know that CBS, after this lawsuit was filed, CBS threatened to sue him.
Yeah,
and that would be really messed up because, I mean, like I don't think this guy was copying Discovery just as much as I don't think Discovery was copying him.
Right. Well, weirdly, the only thing that I saw about it that made me think that it did look like those old that TOS adventure game that I told you about that has that had all the original crew voicing it in, I think, roughly mid-90s. It even could have been early 90s. There was, I think, 2 games released that were point-and-click adventure games. And, I feel like he might have taken some inspiration from those, but that was also just a broad style of the time. And I saw it there were LucasArts point-and-click games, too. So, I wouldn't think that they would have much merit unless they're just trying to, the countersuit is just purely a legal thing where they're like, we need to do this so we don't get harassment lawsuits. I don't know.
But we'll just have to wait and see if anything happens on that. But we'll
keep a watch. We're not dismissing it completely.
And the reason why we haven't really talked about this is because there hasn't been any definitive news other than the fact that this lawsuit has been filed. As far as I know, it's all still pending. But yeah, if anything does happen, then we will revisit the subject. But we also have another controversy at CBS that was not so much a controversy as I guess it would have been controversial, but it was resolved, and that is the CBS CEO Les Moonves, the guy who's largely...
You said Moonves?
Yeah.
Okay.
Guy who's largely responsible for ending Star Trek on television when Enterprise was canceled in 2005, and then largely responsible for bringing it back with Star Trek Discovery on CBS All Access. But he is no longer the CEO of CBS. And
he resigned. Is it like kind of? Did he? Is this one of those he resigned before he could be fired?
Well, I think there's like an agreement. Like I'm sure he got like a golden parachute, but there's some. There were some issues with accusations of harassment, and I'm guessing people looked into it and. Found some not good things, and he
certainly the stuff that I read from the lady who was the I think the showrunner for Designing Women and some other shows I think talked about this, and he sounded like a shitbag. My impression was that this guy that he moved away from kind of CBS's sort of more female positive shows in the 90s and kind of was a harassy kind of guy. It sounded like somebody who probably needed to go. And I only have like a very cursory look at it, but Who's the guy who's been at the center of so much?
Harvey Weinstein?
Weinstein, yeah.
Yeah.
For sure that guy had great creative instincts and created, was the mover and shaker behind a ton of movies I liked. None of that makes him a good person or a person who should still be employed for what he did. And I have a feeling that what I have read suggests that Moonves is in a similar, if not quite as heinous position.
No, without a doubt, Harvey Weinstein's not the only person in Hollywood getting away with that for so long. So.
But it is always it's unfortunate and sad because there's people's careers that he may have fucked with and screwed over, with creepy toxic masculinity and using and lording his power. And yet he may also have had good creative instincts on other things.
Well, he's more of a business guy, so I'm not really. I can't really cite any example of creative input that he had that I know of. But
it seemed like he kind of had control over whether certain projects would get greenlit or not, and that was people's careers there. According to the lady who was the producer of Designing Women and a few other big shows on CBS in the 90s, he would tell her, I like your script and your idea for this, and then always keep it on a back burner. Who knows? There is a certain amount of he said, she said, but I also don't want to make it seem like this is just both sides have points to make. Because there's a good chance, I think, in this one that his side is the fucked up side. But developing, I guess I'd say, I think I'm kind of glad he's gone.
Yeah, and the important thing of this for Star Trek is whoever does end up taking his place as the new CEO of CBS is obviously going to have a great deal of influence on the future of Star Trek.
Yep.
But considering how the wheels are already in motion around Alex Kurtzman's 5-year
mission with the series or
with
the franchise.
5-year mission. It's totally a 5-year mission.
Yeah.
I would assume that CBS will continue to bank on that unless something really weird happens, unless everyone hates the Picard show and unsubscribes from CBS All Access or something ridiculous like that was to happen.
It seems unlikely, but it's possible.
But another thing about Les Moonves, just to go over a little bit of the history with Star Trek and CBS and Paramount, and this will transition us into talking about the movie side of the Star Trek franchise. But and I hate getting into the business side of things. I'm always more.
We want to talk the creative stuff.
Yeah, but the stuff is relevant to the content we will get in the future.
Sure.
But the reason why we got in this place, and actually Larry Nemechek has a great way of describing it as there was a Paramount and Viacom divorce where they made the new Paramount, the new CBS corporation. But basically, Paramount was part of Viacom. All the Star Trek movies and all the Star Trek TV shows lived under the big umbrella. Mm-hmm. And then when they split and they said, okay, we're going to put all the movie stuff with Paramount, all the TV stuff with CBS. Mm-hmm. And it's basically a divorce. And Mama CBS, this is how Larry Nemechek describes it. But Mama CBS kept all of Star Trek with all the merchandising, the home video, the tie-ins with video games. Mm-hmm. And then every now and then, Daddy Paramount would get visitation on the weekends and would take Star Trek out to the movies, and we'd get a Kelvin movie. But it pretty much the rest of it just lived with Mama CBS.
Right.
And there were recent talks of remerging Paramount and CBS back together, which I would actually be in favor of, even though, I was saying, I hate all these corporations, and I think they don't really care about the creativity. They're just in the business to make money. Obviously, that's the system that we're in.
Yep.
And we are in a really weird state. Some might call it late-stage capitalism.
Sure.
But one of the things that's happening now is that we're getting all these mega corporations in entertainment. Disney has just bought Fox.
Right.
And so we're getting to where there's only a handful of these entertainment companies. And Paramount and CBS are both very small fish in the larger pond.
Mm-hmm.
And so it would make sense for them to kind of, join forces and merge together to keep from being swallowed up by like a bigger fish like Disney.
Right.
Or Comcast or AT&T or, whoever. So that would have been cool for us as Star Trek fans, because then we probably would have had more synchronicity between the movies and the TV shows.
Right.
Because it would all be happening under the same roof. And
right. As it is, every time we talk about them now, we kind of have to speculate, oh, well, do we think they're going to bother to play ball with each other? Is this going to be the same Spock as in that one? And you never quite know.
Yeah, and Les Moonves was actually a big opponent of them remerging. Because, he wanted to be the, God Emperor of CBS. And
right.
whatever he wanted.
It's like, that's my fiefdom. Lay off.
I mean, and he's gone now, but it looks like that the remerger will not happen anytime soon, because there's actually a lawsuit against Sherry Redstone, who was one of the shareholders who was trying to arrange this, but
arrange the merger.
Yeah, but you can, these boards can sue people if their voting is not in the best interest of the corporation,
right?
Weird corporate business stuff like that I don't again like to talk about. But yeah, essentially the attempt to remerge the company failed, and they can't even talk about it for the next few years. So it's not going to happen anytime soon, which kind of sucks.
Do we know who? Did we say who actually replaced Les Moonves?
They haven't installed a new permanent CEO, so it's currently.
So we don't know if it's possible that person might push for the merger, might not push for the merger, but whatever it is, it's off the table right now.
Yeah. So maybe someday, but not today.
Right.
So
today's not a good day to merge.
But it is looking good on the TV side with CBS.
Yeah.
So I'm happy about that, and so hopefully Paramount can get their shit together and get another movie, because that's where we're talking now is with the Star Trek movies, and we're kind of in a bit of development hell all of a sudden with the fourth Kelvin movie that was supposed to start production early next year, and was supposed to be directed by S.J. Clarkson. They were going to shoot it in the UK, I believe. And that seems to have stalled. I haven't heard anything on it ever since they said that Chris Hemsworth, who played George Kirk in Star Trek 09, he was supposed to return somehow for this fourth Kelvin movie. And Chris Pine, who plays Captain Kirk in all of them, neither one of them was willing to accept the
pay rates, right?
Yeah, and they were already, I guess, contractually obligated to come in, but I guess Paramount wanted to tweak the deal and pay them on the back end of a certain percentage. And given how Star Trek Beyond underperformed, they didn't want to do that when they have they can do these Thor and Wonder Woman movies instead.
Yeah,
that are guaranteed successes at this point.
There's a part of me that, because I want to see the movies, wants them to be do it for the sake of the franchise. But obviously that makes zero sense for an individual person who wants their career to work, and they want to be treated they want to be paid what they're worth.
Yeah.
And they deserve to be paid what they're worth. But it is unfortunate to see the movie, I guess, at the very least, foundering right now.
Yeah, and there was some good news not that long ago. Carl Urban spoke to some fans that were asking him, and he said that oh yeah, I'm sure that they'll negotiate it and get it worked out. And I was thinking that eventually they would come to some type of an agreement. Worst case scenario, they just kick Chris Hemsworth out and use that to pay Chris Pine more. Right.
But he is the more vital character, although it sounds like they had a very definite storyline to have Hemsworth return. But
then you just get Simon Pegg to work up a new script real fast. And
for me it worked for Star Trek Beyond.
A lot of people, that's their favorite Kelvin movie. So, yeah. But yeah, I actually was thinking we would hear something by now.
Yeah, it's a little, it's not nerve-wracking, I guess I would say, but it's a little, it does seem to suggest, it doesn't seem to be in its favor that there hasn't been any developments.
And if it doesn't happen, I feel sorry for S.J. Clarkson, because this was her big Hollywood break.
Yeah.
She had really only done like some TV work before this.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I was curious to be like, oh, okay, here's a new filmmaker I don't really know much about. I'm curious to see how they do playing ball in the big leagues.
Mm-hmm.
And so it looks like she might lose that opportunity, which is sad. But there's also the Tarantino movie in development. But that was also supposed to use the Kelvin actors.
Right.
And come after this. So would they just fast track that? If Kelvin 4 or Star Trek 14 or whatever you want to call it, if that falls apart, do you just fast track the Star Trek 14 and try to get Chris Pine back for that?
Because I think they are not... this is not like sort of the regimented approach of, say, the Marvel movie franchise. I think if it comes to it, I think they would. Like if they're like they can make that happen, but they can't make the other one happen, then I think they would go ahead with Tarantino's version. And they essentially got a nice trilogy of with the original kind of actors doing their thing, and now it's time to do a crazy Tarantino movie that's kind of its own thing. I could easily see them doing that rather than and not worrying about the fourth.
Yeah, well, the Tarantino movie is supposed to use the Kelvin actors also,
right?
So I kind of think that might. Whatever, I don't know what the story with that is.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Carl Urban also who said that it was going to be rated R and it was going to be just like insane space horror.
Yeah,
and like maybe that should be its own thing and not be one of the Kelvin movies.
Right.
But another thing is that the guy who directs some of the, I guess the most recent Mission Impossible movie, or maybe the last two, Christopher McQuarrie.
Yep. Also wrote The Usual Suspects. That was kind of his breakout movie.
Oh, cool.
And he, after that, I think wrote and maybe directed Way of the Gun, which I didn't really like, but was it had Brian Phillippe and Benicio del Toro in it. But he kicks much ass with Usual Suspects and has been doing a very good job on the Mission Impossible movies.
Yeah. I haven't seen any Mission Impossible movies since Mission Impossible 2, like 20 years ago. But I know I need to watch the newer ones. They're good. He's a hot commodity for Paramount now. Because that's like their big moneymaker is Mission Impossible. Because the Star Trek Beyond underperformed. The Bayformer movies, the last one, didn't do very well. Mm-hmm. So,
but Tom Cruise is eternal.
And Paramount
just like Scientology is.
That's what Newton should have been into Scientology instead of numerology. But if Christopher McQuarrie is making all this money for Paramount with these Mission Impossible movies, he said that he would like to do a Star Trek movie. Oh. So maybe he could get a project.
Yeah, he's got some juice. He could make that happen. Yeah. I didn't know that. That's interesting.
The thing is that Paramount seems like they're really desperate for a big blockbuster franchise, and that makes sense in the age of Marvel movies. Post Harry Potter. The best thing you can do right now if you're a major Hollywood studio is to have like a reliable blockbuster.
Right. Every year or two you put one out and make a shit ton of money.
Yeah. And just hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars worldwide. And, Paramount really wants to have that. And they wanted Star Trek to be that. And, Star Trek Beyond wasn't able to deliver on that front.
Right.
And so what I think they should do is just make a lower budget Star Trek movie. And, we don't need that giant Yorktown station. Looked really cool, but, we didn't need that.
Right. I think, honestly, what people show up for those movies, I mean, there's very good visual spectacle, even in the parts I don't like. Those movies are very good at that. But the energy that Abrams created in that first one came out of, the characters, the kind of energetic camera angles. I mean, don't get me wrong, the thing where they, do the zero-G or the drop through the atmosphere.
Yeah. It did have the visual spectacle.
You do want some of that. But I think that you could pare it down, and as long as if the situations are strong and dramatic and the characters get to do really interesting, dramatic things, I think people would forgive less spectacle.
Like in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, which was the lowest budget of any Star Trek movie, and many people consider the best.
Yeah, it's crazy. Because, it has this, super intense dramatic, all those super intense dramatic moments, and there's some really good space battles and stuff, and, but it did not really need to see a ton of ships and things like that. All they had to have that was that really cool Genesis video that used computer animation.
Yeah, that was made by like Proto Pixar.
Yeah, oh, that's right.
But yeah, maybe Christopher McQuarrie, and I'm less familiar with his work than you are, but yeah, maybe he's the guy with like the strong craft to make that movie on a smaller budget.
Yeah, I could totally see it.
But I mean, there's
his movies, even the Mission Impossible ones, have a sort of cynical streak going through them. They're kind of seem to be, at least about the Mission Impossible ones, kind of these white knights trying to keep from losing too much in like dark times. I don't know if that ethos necessarily is what I want to see in Star Trek, but I also don't think anybody is like just a complete one-trick pony. So
yeah,
I'd be certainly interested to see his shot.
But that's pretty much all we have on Star Trek movies. Sadly, I would think there would be more to talk about, but that's. Hopefully in 2019 we get some movie news. That's 3
interesting possibilities. Right now they're all up in the air. Because I'm interested in Clarkson's movie, I'm interested in Tarantino's movie, and I'd be interested in McQuarrie's movie. So there's good possibilities. It's just that they're all stalled.
Yeah, and I'd love to see all 3 of them. You know, like I said a long time ago, like my ideal...
Maybe that should be the next trilogy, is 3 unrelated movies, but using the cast.
Well, what I would love is to have 2 Star Trek shows on the air, which we're getting that part.
We're gonna get that for sure.
And then a movie every year. And that might be asking for a little much, so I'll settle for like a movie every 2 years.
Okay.
But basically, what I want is what I had from like 1994 to 1998, when there was a movie every 2 years and 2 shows on TV.
Yeah.
I know I'm not going to get 52 episodes a year now. I'm going to get like 26 instead. But
right.
I'm okay with the shorter seasons.
Right.
I see the advantages of that. But yeah,
I would like for your magical wish to come true as well. It's not completely insane. I think it could happen. What I don't quite know, because Star Trek is not Star Wars, and even Star Wars isn't Star Wars just at the moment, and we'll see where Marvel moves in their next phase. They've clearly been more successful with a mega franchise than anything that's ever come before. Does Star Wars have the capacity to grab people like that again? Or was Abrams' Trek kind of like as good as it was going to get as far as bringing in a general audience again? Because it did super well.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Make lower budget movies with lower expectations.
Right. It's why horror movies are so sought by studios, because you can make them on a cheap budget and make millions and millions off of them. So yeah, maybe lowered expectations, but would work for Star Trek.
Yeah, and I do think like a movie...
Lowered budget expectations, I should say. I still want it to have a damn good story and characters.
For sure. But like one movie every year is... I think Star Trek is vast enough. But I don't know if your audience would start getting fatigued. So maybe one movie every 2 years would be the way to do it.
I think that'd be the smarter way to go at first, for sure.
But basically, Star Trek movies should be like Bond. They should just always make them. You can change, you can shake it up, you can recast, you can reboot, whatever. But yeah, they should always make Star Trek movies. It's like they should always make James Bond movies.
Yeah, certainly. Like if they wanted to, if the audience was there for it. Star Trek has a much wider variety, we've talked about this, of story possibilities than Star Wars. It does not always have to be about a war, for instance. You could have an interesting conflict that deals with like a first contact team. That could be just its own movie. Doesn't even need to have... I'd probably have like a few recognizable cast members in there from some incarnation of Trek. But you could tell a cool science fiction story with some cool Star Trek trappings in there. And it could be about all kinds of different stuff.
But we will transition away from movies and talk about Star Trek and other material.
Other media.
Mm-hmm. So one of the big pieces of news that we got was that Simon and Schuster book deal was extended in 2017 or 18, but recently, whenever it was. So that was one of the things that was concerning people. Was in 2017 there were very few Star Trek books coming out when they normally there's a lot coming out every year, but that's because they were renegotiating, and so those negotiations did complete, and now Pocket Books can continue releasing their Star Trek novels, and in this year we got several. We had some Discovery books. Yep. There was Drastic Measures at the beginning of the year with it was about Lorca from the Prime universe and Captain Giorgio, although I think she's a commander in the book. Mm-hmm. Then there was a prequel book about Saru on his time on the Shinjo called Star Trek Discovery Fear Itself. There is a Star Trek Voyager novel, Architects of Infinity. And also one of the...
Out of curiosity, is that set post-Voyager?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if it was like...
I think so.
Lost Tales.
It might be. I don't know. I didn't read it. And they're also doing... There's Titan publishes the Prometheus books, which are in German language first, and then get translated to English. Mm-hmm. So those aren't with pocket books, but...
Prometheus?
Yeah, that's a ship that is in a Voyager episode that you haven't seen yet.
Okay.
But there are already some news on Star Trek books coming out next year in 2019. And I think the big one that a lot of people are going to be interested in, because everyone is silly for Tilly, is going to be, there's a Cadet Tilly book that's going to be a prequel. That's I kind of get bored of like all these prequels with like whenever there's a new Star Trek show or like a new property of anything that has like tie-in novels. Like this feels like all they can do is like prequels.
You know, I don't think I've ever quite had the antipathy for them. I totally get it. I mean, the past is the unmined area that they can play with. They're obviously going to have less possibilities for playing around with, like, well, let's do a Tilly-focused story that's set in the present on Discovery, but they're not going to be able to make major changes to her character or grow it too much because the showrunners are going to get to do that. So getting a chance to kind of show them in the past is a kind of cool thing, and it usually allows you to spotlight the Academy or whatever their early career was. I don't know. I kind of like that stuff.
Well, I get it, but it just feels derivative when we get like a whole bunch of it. Like we've all the Star Trek Discovery novels so far we've gotten. They've all been prequels of characters who were like on Discovery during season 1.
Right. Most of when I was reading a fair number of Star Trek novels in like the 80s and 90s more. They tended to be essentially like lost adventures, something, just another tale of the adventures of the Enterprise crew. I feel like they would kind of dig into kind of emotional arcs that they sometimes wouldn't do on a standard 1-hour show, especially in the TOS and TNG era. But I thought they had a pretty good track record with them. I would almost certainly read a Tilly book.
Yeah, well, the book we're talking about is called The Way to the Stars by Una McCormick.
Is that Una as in number 1 on the...
Yeah, she has the same name as
the first officer for Pike.
The name that was added in through the books.
Right.
That may or may not be canon. But Discovery can make it canon.
Right. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah. So, that
Rebecca Romaine Stamos, or Rebecca Romaine now?
Yeah, she dropped the Stamos.
Right. Did she drop Stamos? Or just his name?
I think both.
Okay, good job, you.
But yeah, this novel will be out in January, so it's coming out pretty soon.
I'm gonna probably try that one. It's called The Way to the Stars.
Yeah,
which suggests to me that it is indeed about her Academy days or something like that.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's about. And then in March we're getting the Antares Maelstrom from Greg Cox, which. That was something that Khan referenced in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan.
Right. Is that the I'll chase you round the Antares Maelstrom, round perdition's flame before I give him up?
Yeah. So it's a nasty part of space.
Yep. I honestly, I know that that's a little bit kind of, you can argue that that's mining a single line and trying to blow it up. But
that's exactly what that is.
Yeah, but I kind of dig it because I'm sure it's not just that.
Yeah, it could.
There could be all sorts of other Star Trek stuff in there, and although there's plenty of areas of space that we know are dangerous areas of space, I'm interested to know what they're going to do with this one.
It feels a little bit like I don't know. It feels a little bit like Star Wars tie-in material.
Yeah, it's true. Like somebody who walked by in one scene, you're like, we're going to do a whole book about this guy. That bartender in the Mos Eisley Cantina, he's the hero. But at the same time, I think it's always like, if you're into the properties, you're always going to have more enthusiasm than some average dude is going to be. And, Wrath of Khan being, one of my favorite Trek movies, if not my favorite. Yeah, it's my favorite.
Yeah, that's totally your favorite.
What am I even talking about?
I would say it's one of my favorites.
Yes.
It's one of yours.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, what would vie with, what are like the one or two that are like your other top two?
2, 3, 4, and 6 are all too close.
Okay. Alright. Just curious.
I would probably say 2 is the one that's most, it's the most expertly made.
Mm-hmm. But you've made an interesting case in the past as to why it feels less Trek in some ways than some of the others. But we shouldn't go into the full. We'll talk about that.
I think we'll talk about those in 2019. The final book we know about that's coming out next year in 2019 is from Dayton Ward, and it's called Available Light, and it will be part of the Section 31 series of novels that they've been doing. That I've heard some interesting stuff about. That some of it sounds good, some of it sounds a little weird to me. I haven't read them, but
I'm fearful of Section 31 stuff because it contradicts how I like to think of the Federation.
Yeah.
But it's obviously going to feel more relevant than ever, perhaps, with the next season of Discovery clearly going to embrace talking about it and showing it.
Yeah, and it's weird because Section 31 used to just be like this weird Deep Space Nine thing that got mentioned a little bit on Enterprise, but and now it's like really it's like Section 31 and the Mirror Universe are both super popular now. Like
I feel like, especially if I were a kid just getting into it, I would gravitate to the kind of badass, violent things. And Section 31 and the Mirror Universe would be among those.
Yeah.
I'd be like, I actually kind of like the Mirror Universe crew kind of better than the Prime crew. That would be me. If I were 12 right now.
Oh, you'd be a dumb 12-year-old.
I totally would be.
But that's kind of what they do,
Section 31 would be, if you're like, my favorite Marvel superhero is Venom or the Punisher or whatever, you probably ought to look into the Section 31 stuff. That said, I think they're going to bring some interesting moral ambiguity to it and hopefully treat it with the harsh. I hope they don't just make it sexy and cool and spy stuff. I feel like you want to approach it the same way you would like the dirty trick CIA stuff. You want to be somewhat realistic about it.
It's such a major story generator that I can understand why people want to use it in the books and in Star Trek Discovery. Mm-hmm. And even the video games have used it a little bit. Star Trek Online, that actually the little that I've dabbled in Star Trek Online that had one of my favorite uses of Section 31.
That's pretty cool.
But we will transition into video games, I guess, on that note.
Sure.
And talk about...
It's an easy jump because we're talking about Star Trek Online.
Yeah, and they just released the Age of Discovery content that neither Dave nor I have played. I plan on playing it soon. I played Star Trek Online on my PS4 sometimes.
I also sort of plan on playing it, possibly if I can make time.
Let me know if y'all want to see live streams of me playing it. But I'm not a big MMO guy, so I don't really know how to manage all my resources on there. I just play the games because I like the stories of the missions.
Perhaps one of our kindly viewers could mentor you through it.
If anyone wants to walk me through Star Trek Online, by all means, let me know, and we'll set up a live stream.
So we watched the trailer for this new one. It's the new expansion. It's actually out now, you said?
Yeah, it's already out.
Called Age of Discovery. And I was trying to pin down, because I know it's essentially, most of it is set, generally the game is set post-Nemesis. Right?
Right.
But you said that there's...
I think it's called Agents of Yesterday, which is...
and it's just straight up TOS era?
Yeah. I'll show you my... I got a Tellarite captain, and he's got the Kirk gold uniform.
Nice.
I'll show it to you sometime, but...
And this, Discovery is the ballpark of Kirk's era, and so they're going to fit it in there?
Yeah, so this will basically be just you create a character and play some missions that's set during the first 6 months of the Klingon war in Star Trek Discovery.
Yep.
When Michael Burnham is on prison before she's on the Discovery, but it does feature Cadet Tilly, who is voiced by Mary Wiseman.
Yep.
And there's more Discovery content coming out soon. But yeah, Star Trek Online has been going strong for like a decade now.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive to be that up to date. And I mean, I could see the strong appeal of, say, this is the kind of thing that, like, if it was in a book or something, it might bug me. But if it was in the game and you had a mission to, we need you to go get some piece of information from Prisoner Burnham or whatever that could be useful for this mission you're on, and you'll go off to some prison colony where she's being held, and before she gets sentenced or whatever, that would be pretty cool. Like, I'd sort of nerd out doing it, even though I would be like, well, they probably shouldn't do this in the actual TV show, but like for a game, it'd be cool. I like that kind of stuff.
The game does a real good job of finding ways to like stay in the what feels like Star Trek.
Yeah.
And
well, some of the stuff we saw on the show, like the when they did Lorca did the rescue mission that got busted out. Who was the
Ash Tyler?
Ash. I feel like missions like that would be cool in the game. And anything. There's lots of stuff that's already suggested by the show, and where they can find their own inroads. There's cool visuals for the insides of those Klingon ships, even though I don't love how they look. They're well designed. That you can make use of that in a video game and expand on it in interesting ways. Hopefully.
Yeah, well, I like what I've played of Star Trek Online. And I've played I played all the TOS stuff. I played a good bit of the Federation stuff, a good bit of the Klingon stuff, and I really love it. The only reason why I haven't played it more is just it's very time consuming.
Right, like all MMOs.
Yeah, like I typically play video games that are more linear, that have like an official like end point that I can play a game and like get like a story and then end the game and never play it again. Which that's typically what I gravitate to. But yeah, because I love the writing in this game, and it has so many. They get so many voice actors to come back.
Right.
They had Leonard Nimoy's voices in the game. They got him to record a lot of stuff before he died.
That's pretty cool.
And they have James Doohan's son does like the voice of Scotty, and he does like a very good Scotty voice.
That's cool.
And,
it's a little weird, but cool.
Walter Koenig is in, and not just like TOS guys, but there's a bunch of next gen guys in all the shows.
That's cool, and just the ability to walk around and inhabit that universe that we've all watched and enjoyed.
Yeah, it's one of the best video game experiences that I've ever had, even though I'm not a big MMO guy, and I kind of wish I was, so that I could be just like a Star Trek Online expert, like I kind of feel like I master every other aspect of Star Trek. So like maybe not the novels, but as far as the shows or movies, I feel like I can just consume all of them and mine everything out of every single frame and just like know everything
about it. If you just had a little bit more time, you could go ahead and add this to your Trek repertoire.
Yeah. But no, I love Star Trek Online, and I'm looking forward to getting into some Age of Discovery. So I think we're just going to talk about some of the Star Trek comics now, because there's been some big things going on in the Star Trek comics, and most notably, I think, was with the Star Trek Boldly Go, the Kelvin ongoing series came to an end not that long ago. So
I feel like they did solid work with that when I would occasionally look in on it. Kelvin's not quite my thing overall, but I felt like they did a good job and had a pretty solid run on that.
Yeah, and
what do you go, 30, 40 issues?
Well, they had Star Trek ongoing, and then they did Star Trek Boldly Go after that. But it was in the weird hiatus because they don't know what happens after Star Trek Beyond.
Right.
And so they basically had to cancel it because they're like, we don't know where the characters need to be, what ships they need to be on.
You know what that means? Prequel stories.
Yeah.
But so they wrapped that one up, though. They're essentially done with the Kelvin comics for right now.
So there's no longer a Star Trek ongoing comic, except there kind of is with the Tiptons.
They've stealthed it out with the Mirror Universe stuff.
Yeah. So
each of the three miniseries, the first one was all about the bad guys.
Even before that, even with because they shoehorned in the Doctor Who crossover.
Yeah, they're pretty clever about that. Anything that they've done is essentially canonical to them. Yeah. But broadly speaking, with the three Mirror Universe miniseries that they've done, the first one was all bad guys. The second
Mirror
one
broken.
The second one, Through the Mirror, had the bad guys meet the good guys, and the third one is all about the good guys with some bad guy infiltrators.
Terror Incognita.
Yeah. And so it's pretty clever because they've all but handed it off to the good guys at this point, to Picard and crew. I'm not quite sure how they'll proceed from here, but the storylines have been very classic TNG type storylines. It's just that every once in a while, an evil Barclay is like, and then just disappears.
But it does make me wonder if we might get an official Star Trek Next Generation ongoing comic.
I think they should. At this point, it's actually kind of ready for it. Maybe better to wait till the Picard show was going to launch and have it be kind of like a synergize.
They're definitely going to do tie-ins with that, though.
That's true. They'll have their own thing with an older Picard. But yeah, I feel like the Tiptons at this point, they've kind of earned another ongoing series with TNG. I'd love to see that and just see the kind of stories that I got from the novels and that you could explore in an ongoing comic. Lost stories. I was just mentioning earlier Troy and Wesley, and there's other characters that didn't quite get their due. I could give me a cool lost story about Tasha Yar. Tell me, some unknown story with any given character who showed up for one episode of TNG, and I think you could go places with it. What happened to those proto-Vulcans that they accidentally taught religion to and then had to unteach it to? Where are they now? What happened after Darmok? All right, you don't want to ruin the good ones, but just there's possibilities.
Yeah, there's a bunch, and if you actually want a vehicle to follow up on all that stuff like that, Star Trek Online, pretty much every mission is tied into something that existed in Star Trek. So
what about? Let me just throw out an idea for a level there. A Picard dune buggy chase in the style of Nemesis.
A video game would be the best way to revisit that.
Yes. Actually, that's true. That'd be the one way you could kind of enjoy it on a kind of removed level.
Yeah, I would totally forgive that.
Right.
Unless the mechanics of the gameplay just suck.
Right. All right, but carry on with actual thoughts.
But we do as far as Star Trek comics go, we do currently have the Star Trek Discovery Next Generation Terra Incognita mini-series coming out, which, it is a sequel to the Mirror Universe comics they've been doing, even though it's set in the Prime Universe, which is weird, but we'll definitely cover that at some point in the future.
I'm going to generally just go ahead and throw out all of it's recommended. I don't like every single turn that they've done in it, but broadly speaking, I've enjoyed every issue they've put out on one level or another.
And we also have the Star Trek and Transformers crossover.
Right. Animated Trek of the 70s meets animated Transformers G1 of the 80s.
Yeah. So if you like Star Trek the Animated Series or the Transformers cartoon...
An animated series means it's going to have... who are the crewmen that they added in that one?
Oh, Eric's, the three-armed guy who replaced Chekhov.
Yep.
And Maress, the cat lady.
Yep. So those are prominently featured in there. They clearly are going to be having fun with the canon of those very specific animated incarnations.
And they have had some Star Trek Discovery tie-in comics, but those have all wrapped. There were 2 miniseries and an annual. I plan on talking about all of those before we get into Star Trek Discovery Season 2. So if you want to find out T'Kuvma's prequel story, or how Paul Stamets and Hugh Culber met each other and fell in love, or what happened in the Mirror Universe after Emperor Giorgio came to the Prime Universe with Michael Burnham.
Right, basically what happened after the last thing we saw.
Yeah. So all of those and more in the Star Trek Discovery prequel comics, or prequel/sequel comics. But yeah, as far as we know, there's no more Star Trek Discovery comics coming out anytime soon. Nothing that they've announced. What is coming out, though, is another prequel story with Picard on the Stargazer, set 20 years before the Next Generation. It's going to be a one-shot issue. I'm actually really excited about this.
Because they have a badass creative team for it.
Yes. So this is going to be written by Peter David, who is one of the most prolific comic book creators.
And Trek fans may know him as a super prolific Trek novelist.
Yes. He's written tons of Star Trek stuff.
Yep. The one that I think people most associate him with is the Imzadi the one that sort of zeroed in on the relationship between Riker and Troy. Before that had all been before they'd say even been married in the movies, well before that. This would have been in the 90s while TNG was still running. But it's one of the better known ones. He's better known for. He's known for his sense of humor, which is a little bit almost more like he grew up with TOS, and he kind of brought some of those sensibilities to when he writes about TNG. So it's an interesting fusion of it. And he's also just a super stalwart pro. He's got his own prose novels he's written that have been fantasy novels and other stuff like that. He's done adaptations of movies. He is a super strong craftsman.
And he's a major canon junkie. He'll find ways to make it all fit in continuity and explain it. He'll fix things that the shows and movies have messed up.
Right.
He'll fix them in his novels.
And so he's going to be, the premise here is young Picard serving on the Stargazer.
Yeah.
With is it Beverly Crusher and her...
Cadet Crusher. Well, she's not Crusher yet, but Cadet Beverly Howard.
Right. And also her future husband-to-be.
Jack Crusher.
Jack Crusher, yeah.
And the art is going to be provided by J.K. Woodward.
Who killed it more than anything has ever been killed on the original Star Trek... what was the first one called? Mirror Broken?
Yeah, well, Star Trek Next Generation Mirror Broken.
Star Trek Next Generation Mirror Broken, yeah, with the designing all that and painting all that amazing mirror universe Picard and crew stuff. So he'll have that photorealistic style. A guy who's his ship designs, his crew designs and stuff like that are second to none. He does great photo reference without making it stiff. You've interviewed him before. He's a cool ass dude.
Yeah, check out our interview from the Star Trek cruise.
So this is it's almost sad that it's a one shot, but at the same time I know Peter David is a guy who could write a real punchy standalone story.
Yeah, because he's old school.
He's old school, and I like that idea a lot.
That's how comics used to be.
Yeah. It's gonna leave me wanting more. I have a strong feeling, but maybe if it works out, then they can go and they can do other stuff. Fatheree, it's a prequel. How do you feel about that?
No, I'm totally on board with this. This is
when your creative team is this good.
Yeah, but my problem with prequels is when they start feeling derivative, or when they feel like they're all tapping into the same thing. And this is
a book just about the Antares Maelstrom.
Well, this is very virgin territory. Picard on the Stargazer. We know very little about that actually.
Right.
And so I think
what was his position?
Well, he was captain.
That's right. That was his first captaincy.
But it was cool how he became captain because he was the second officer, and the captain and first officer died, and so he had to take over in a combat situation.
Right.
But the other than that, and other than his when he loses the ship to the Ferengi, that's all we really know about the Stargazer. Is how he got the ship and how he lost the ship.
Right.
So I'm glad to see them exploring that.
Yeah, it's a cool thing and unexpected too. I don't think anybody thought that is going to be the next Trek comic, would be a flashback to Picard's younger days. But I feel like he did good with the chemistry of Riker and Troy in Imzadi. I remember when I read that, and I felt like he was finding sparks that were really not there in the show all the time, and so he was doing the show one better. I will be anxious to see what kind of sparks he will turn up for Picard and Beverly in this, and where her husband to be fits in. So yeah, I'm super hyped for that.
And then
easily the Trek comic I'm most looking forward to.
Likewise, then the last Star Trek comic that we have any information on is going to be Star Trek: The Q Conflict. And it is a crossover between Voyager, The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and the original series. So it'll be written by the Tiptons with art by David Messina.
So just to double check, the people the shows left out of this are Discovery and Enterprise, right? Okay, just checking. It can get straight up overcrowded. I don't necessarily think it's a diss.
These were the 4 Star Trek shows that existed when I was a kid.
Right.
So when I got into Star Trek, this is what Star Trek was. It was TOS and TNG and DS9 and Voyager.
David Messina, is that the guy's name?
Yeah.
I definitely remember the name. He's done some other Trek stuff, but I don't always remember these artists in particular. Do we know what he has worked on in previous Star Trek stuff?
He worked on some of the again, prequel comics.
Yep.
He did the
For
Star
the
Trek
Kelvin.
Countdown for Star Trek 09, which is a really interesting miniseries that kind of connects the post-Nemesis world to the Kelvin world.
Yeah,
And
whenever you told me about that, there would always be these bits and pieces. You're like, oh, well, the real reason,
why the Narada looks like that.
right, it's
or
all borged up, and there was an interesting way that it happened, or what the storyline was.
The reason why Nero has weird tattoos on his face.
Yeah, like, it seems like they did a pretty good job with those and cared more about, like, canon and all of that stuff than J.J. Abrams ever could.
Yeah, for sure. They were playing cleanup.
I cannot picture in my head what that art looked like, but it was pretty good. I'm pretty sure.
It's
at the very least solid.
It's very much in the house style that IDW uses for their Star Trek properties.
So it's going to be a crossover. Well, sorry, go ahead.
They're bringing back the Star Trek Waypoints. What's that? That is where they get like a little bit experimental when they do the.
They're bringing it back.
Yeah, so the Star Trek Waypoint comics are coming back, but I don't think we know much about that other than that they are bringing them back.
That's cool.
They're gonna do one starring Spot the Cat.
Oh, awesome. They did one about Archer's Beagle and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I liked that story.
These are some of them are lightweight stories. Some of them actually had some depth for just something that might be like 10 or 12 pages long. But overall, I thought it was a fun series, and especially if you're like a longtime Trek fan who's like watched every era.
If you're a Porthos fan, if you're a fan of Archer's Dog, like I'm not going to spoil it here.
It had really good artwork too. Everybody should, I think, check out the Waypoint series. So that's cool to hear. Now this crossover one, it's going to have those 4 eras. Do we know anything about what the storyline is, other than Q is going to...
It's going to have Q. Yeah, that's pretty much all we know. Which this is
who's writing it?
The Tiptons.
The Tiptons. Okay. Oh, that's good stuff then. That's I think that's all pretty promising. They're the very guys that we were just saying we would like if they were doing an ongoing Next Generation. Maybe this is still essentially they may do a series of miniseries that make it as much as if they were doing it, but keep it safe from getting that like issue 17 of the comic may see some fatigue in readership, but they won't get that if it's a continual series of miniseries. So I'm kind of down for it. They sort of are event type miniseries, Doctor Who, crossover between the mirror universes, Q crossover, but so far they've been the vibe they always capture is the TNG vibe. So I feel like it still all functions as a TNG ongoing.
But we'll see if the Q conflict turns out to be it'd be part 4 of their ongoing, or no, it'd be
right. Well, if you include it'd be part 5 if you include the Doctor Who crossover.
Yeah, they totally stealthed a ongoing series.
Yeah, but
that's pretty much all we have for Star Trek comic news. So that's pretty much everything in the franchise from what's going on now and what's going on in the coming year that we know of.
So I feel like the comics have the most concrete things that are actually coming out that I'm excited for. The Picard show, arguably the Picard show kind of outweighs everything. The movies are in the most nebulous territory, but have a lot of potentially cool things that could happen. It's really up in the air. But the concrete cool stuff from the comics, concrete cool stuff probably from the video games, pretty good stuff if you're reading the books, hopefully, and new series starting up with tons and tons of potential. We'll be having 2 Trek shows for the first time in since 2005?
Since 1999.
Oh, 1999, that's right. So, I feel like this is a pretty good state of the franchise. What do you think?
Yeah. Hopefully we're doing even better a year from now, but I think it's definitely... a year ago, we would say this is probably like best case scenario.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to have something concrete with the movies.
That is the weakest link right now is the movies, but they managed to get 3 movies out that did kind of re-energize their franchise and at least has the potential for more, and probably fueled some of the interest in the current Discovery and stuff like that. So it's not like the movies are a wash. There's been some strong stuff. It's just nothing in the last year or 2. So yeah, I feel pretty good about it. I feel pretty good about Star Trek's future right at the moment.
Yeah, after so many years not having anything, except for a movie every 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, we may have it's an embarrassment of riches, honestly, and I'm disgusted at us. We're gluttons for Star Trek.
So hopefully the 53rd year of Star Trek proves to be as much as it looks like it's turning out to be.
Yeah. Just keep going, keep doing what you're doing, Star Trek of various different stripes.
But as for those various different stripes, I think the next thing we'll be talking about on the 48th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast will be the Star Trek Next Generation Through the Mirror comic. So this is the sequel miniseries to the one we talked about before, The Mirror Broken.
Yep.
This is where Prime Picard and his crew must face off against the Mirror Picard and his crew.
Yep.
And their enterprises look like this. If you're watching the video, we have the Mirror Enterprise with her 3 nacelles versus the Prime.
Right.
So that's what you have to look forward to. So, oh no, it's Photon. So, until next time,
live long and prosper, y'all.
Thank all of you so much for checking out this installment of Tex-Trek. I hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to like our YouTube videos and subscribe to our channel. Audio-only version of episodes are available at our website, www.tex-trek.com. Please check out our site, especially if you just want an audio-only podcast. We have that available for you. Y'all can also keep up with us online. You can follow us on Twitter, @TXTrek, or you can check us out on Facebook at www.facebook.com/tex-trek. Please, by all means, let us know what you think by dropping a comment anywhere you see fit. We definitely want to hear your feedback. Let us know what you liked and what you would like to see more of, what you would like to see differently going forward. If you want to email me directly, go ahead. I can be reached at fathereeactual@tex-trek.com. Thank all y'all again. Take care.